Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome. My name is Isabella, and I work as a qualitative researcher at UNICEF Innocenti, and I'm very excited to welcome you to this Gender Webinar 2026, co-hosted by Global School Leaders and UNICEF Innocenti. Just before we get started, I have a few guidelines to share for this session to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So first of all, please select the interpretation option at the bottom of your screen to choose your preferred language so that you can follow the discussion seamlessly. As you can see on the screen, the session is available in English, Spanish, and French. And you should be able to access that translation by following the instructions that are being shown. But please do let us know if you face any challenges at all by typing in the chat. The session is going to last about 90 minutes, and this includes dedicated time for Q&A at the end of the session. Please feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions, and the panelists will try and answer as many of those as possible. And you can also use the chat to engage with other attendees or share insights of your own. As attendees, you will be on mute throughout the session, and this is just to help us avoid any background noise. Something to note is that the session is going to be recorded and clips from this discussion are going to be available following the session. And finally, just a gentle reminder to keep comments respectful in the chat to make sure that we have a positive and productive environment here today. So now that we have that out of the way, hello, hola, and bonjour to all, and welcome. And thank you very much for joining us today. We're very excited to have such a diverse group of participants for this important conversation. And to begin, we'd like to ground the discussion with a global perspective on gender and school leadership. And we're very lucky to have Tejas Airodi here with us today, who's going to be sharing some key insights from Global School Leaders Gender Review. And this is going to be helping us to better understand the current landscape, challenges, and opportunities when it comes to advancing gender equity in school leadership. So with that, Tejas, over to you.
Let me pull up my slides quickly. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Tejas, and I'm a senior research manager at Global School Leaders. To frame this conversation, we thought it'd be good to give you a general global perspective on the role of gender in school leadership. And to do that, I'll be using an evidence review that we had conducted in 2024, where we reviewed research on gender and school leadership, which included over 50 studies from Africa, Asia, and Latin America to answer these three primary questions that you see on your screen. One, in what ways do female school leadership affect students? Two, what is the extent of female school leaders underrepresentation, particularly in the LMIC context, and what factors lead to that underrepresentation? And three, what can we do to improve representation of women in school leadership? I will put the link for this evidence review in the chat once I finish the presentation. But in essence, I will be spending the next 5 to 7 minutes just talking with you about these three questions. We know that there is a learning crisis, particularly in the LMIC context. For instance, 7 out of 10 children are not acquiring even minimal proficiency in literacy by the age of 10. One of the strategies that is useful to address this learning crisis is improving female representation, because there is evidence that we found that having female leaders leads to better student enrollment, leads to better student retention, as well as learning outcomes. In addition to these access and learning outcomes, they are also key to improve gender equity in schools. For instance, there was a study that was conducted, which included 14 Francophone African countries, which found that on average, learning outcomes for both mathematics and reading are higher in female-led primary schools than those in male-led schools. Similarly, there was research that was conducted in Laos, which found that schools with comparatively higher student learning outcomes are twice more likely to be led by a female school principal than those with low student learning outcomes. So this establishes that, female-led schools tend to show better educational outcomes compared to those under male leadership. We also know that, as I was sharing earlier, in addition to improving the enrollment, retention, and learning outcomes for all students, schools which are led by female school principals also have better gender equitable outcomes in general. For example, there is research in Togo that shows that having a female principal in the school is associated with better promotion rates to the next grade and better learning results for female students. Additionally, a study in schools across Uganda suggests that engaging with a senior female teacher significantly improved a female students' odds of developing reading and writing skills. Why is this the case? Like, what is it that female school leaders do specifically that leads to better improvement in learning outcomes and gender equity outcomes? On your left, you see a list of these practices, leadership practices that was found to be particularly that female leaders particularly imbibe. One, creating strong pedagogical and learning environments, emphasizing on instructional leadership with their teachers, having effective management, people management practices, as well as being able to perform their operational and monitoring aspects of their role really well. And on the right, you'll also see they're implementing strategies that promote teacher attendance. They're engaging with families better, and generally they create a more collegial, collaborative, and democratic environment in their schools. Yet, with all of the positive benefits of having women in leadership positions, there is massive underrepresentation in school leadership positions, right? So we know that in primary schools, generally it's said that it's predominantly women-dominated field, which is like teaching. But when you go from teaching to school leadership roles, you see more and more male domination, particularly from the global evidence that we have. Over only 26% of overall proportion of school leaders in low and middle income countries are female. And this number is significantly higher in high income countries, which is around 53%. Particularly in most African nations, this number is even staggeringly low, with around just 9 to 21% of school leadership positions are held by women. Why is that the case? Many intertwined factors contribute to this, which are systemic, societal, as well as individual driven. Some of them I have listed here. We will use the conversation that follows next to kind of like delve deeper into each of these barriers. But just to illustrate, there are lack of transparent procedures in the selection, appointment, and promotion of women in school leadership roles. There are also inadequate opportunities for professional development, networking, and mentorship. There are generally leadership is stereotyped to be sort of masculine domain, and that sort of affects who gets to be in these positions. Sometimes the organizational culture and workplace dynamics also constrain this possibility. And lastly, the sociocultural norms regarding traditional family roles, and also how women also perceive these traditional family roles at an individual level, kind of stops them from taking on school leadership roles. Briefly, if this is the underrepresentation, and these are some of the barriers that women face in school leadership roles, what are some of the strategies that could be used to improve gender equity? And then again, we'll use the conversation that follows to kind of delve deeper into this. But just to give you an idea, increasing access to education for women, as well as deliberate creation of leadership identity for women. Example, creating positive role models, awareness building is found to be a really good strategy to promote gender in school leadership, as well as creating more mentoring and networking opportunities, and setting up equitable administrative and policy frameworks. This include, creating more equitable recruitment policies, progression from teaching to school leadership roles, as well as equitable salary policies to mitigate this issue. With that, I will pause and hand it back to, I think, Isabella.
Thank you very much, Tejas, for this really interesting presentation and for helping set the stage and share insights at a global level. So to bring this closer to practice, we're now going to hear from Carolina Alban Conto from UNICEF Innocenti. And Carolina will be sharing some key findings from recent research that was carried out in Ghana, together with global school leaders. This work will help us understand how gender and school leadership play out in a specific context and what we can learn from the experience of Ghana in particular. So with that, Carolina, over to you.
Thank you, Isabella. Just want to confirm that you can see my slides, hear my voice. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present today on this research. My name is Carolina Alban. I work as research manager with the education team at UNICEF Innocenti, the Office of Strategy and Evidence. And I'm going to be presenting today an initiative that is one of our flagship programs, which is entitled Women in Learning Leadership, WILL. With a deep dive in recent research we are just about to publish on Ghana. So first of all, some words about our Women in Learning Leadership research. So this is an applied research initiative that is co-producing evidence with two main objectives. The first is strengthening school leadership, helping to better identify the most effective management and leadership practices and how they can be scaled to improve student learning and well-being. The second objective is to advancing women's representation in leadership in education in general, to better understand the barriers that women face to achieve and succeed in leadership positions, including in school leadership. In our research, we use mixed methods approaches. We include primary data collection, quantitative and qualitative. We mainly focus so far in primary education. And one very important part of our WILL research, as many other research initiatives at Innocenti, is that we co-create and implement the research with governments, with UNICEF country offices, and with partners. And on WILL, we have two amazing partners who are IIP UNESCO and GSL. We are currently developing research activities on WILL in 7 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We have current activities in Benin, Guinea, Ethiopia, and Madagascar with IIP UNESCO. We have this research on Ghana with GSL, and we also have research that has been published and is in process to get into publications in Chad and South Sudan. So now I'll be focusing on our WILL Ghana report that is going to be available in a couple of weeks. You have here the QR code so that you can access our website and have all the content I'm going to share with more details very, very soon. We are entitling this report Women in School Leadership in Ghana, Barriers, Enablers, and Policy Pathways. So the rationale and the design of this research, first of all, Ghana is a country that is doing great efforts to strengthening school leadership. This is a key priority in Ghana's most recent education sector plan. And the main goal of improving school leadership is to help enhancing teacher quality, mentoring, and school management. But despite strong policy commitments, including a 40% quota for women representation in decision-making roles in the government, gender inequity in school leadership roles persist. Our analytical approach includes 3 elements. We first start with analyzing existing data and information, including policy frameworks and documents. We has analyzed a lot of recent school census from Ghana and decided to do some analysis that I'm going to be presented today with the school census from 2020-2021. It's not the most recent one, but it's the one that includes more variables and information about school leaders, and that allows us to better understand the status of women representation and contextualize the research. We are also, as I was saying, collecting data, original data. We, for this specific research, conducted a national representative quantitative survey that tried to examine school leader experiences, perceptions, attitudes, and practices. We conducted 665 surveys with head teachers, mainly men and women. And we also had a qualitative component, including interviews with head teachers, and district officials, a total of 75. Okay, so first about women representation in school leadership. So the finding is not surprising. Women remain underrepresented despite the strong qualifications. So in Ghana, to have some figures, women account for 50% of basic school teachers. So men are the other 50%, but only 20% of basic schools are led by a woman, which means that 80% are led by a man. So women's representation in school leadership varies widely by region. We have regions like OT, in which we have only 9% of the basic schools led by women, and 32% in Greater Accra. This 20% at the beginning is the national average. We also know that women have strong qualifications. 16% of women head teachers in the sample hold a master's degree or above, compared to 8% of men. We also know that women head teachers have on average 21 years of teaching experience, compared to 17 years for men, so a gap of 4 years in favor of women. Women are very skilled, have more experience, yet women take on average 2 more years to reach a head teacher position compared to men. And we wanted to better understand this gender gap in head teacher appointments. So using this school census from 2020-2021, we were able to implement some statistical analysis to better understand the probability of being a head teacher and comparing the results between men and women. And what we observe is that the probability of being a head teacher in the case of men is 8%, and in the case of women is 2.7%, which means that the gender gap in favor of men for arriving to these positions is 5.3 percentage points. We also were able to better analyze what explains this difference. And on this, we were analyzing 2 specific elements. One is the differences in the characteristics. So basically what we observe, because men and women have different observable characteristics, age, experience, qualifications. So we were able to establish that 0.3 percentage points of these 5.3 are explained by these differences in characteristics. So if women had the same experience and qualifications profile as men, the gap would narrow from 5.3 percentage points to 5, which is still big. The second element that explains the largest share of this gender gap is linked to the second component, that it's accounting for the difference in how these characteristics are rewarded. And it's 4.8 percentage points. This means that similar qualifications and experience are less likely to lead to head teacher appointments for women than men, even if women are upskilled so that they have the same observable characteristics. Their characteristics are going to be perceived and rewarded differently in the system. In this research, we also were able to identify some of the challenges and barriers that are related to this gender gap and the impossibility of women to achieve more head teacher positions. And I'm going to summarize these findings in 4 items. The first is social expectations, gender norms, basically, that require women to shoulder most unpaid care and domestic work. Also, that women often have less control over household finances, and this is impacting mainly their capacity of having time and resources to pursue professional development. These 2 characteristics. There is also a factor that is important, which is that promotions to head teacher positions often require relocation, including relocation to rural and remote areas. And women constantly held back by being separated from their families, also because finding jobs for spouses is less likely in rural areas where there are less jobs. And they qualify some of the areas as less safety with less options for transportation and housing concerns. And the 4th one is the lack of the standardized recruitment that leads to bias in appointment, and also that sometimes other staff perceive women as less capable, with less authority and less leadership skills. Another finding I want to share is about the perceptions about school leadership, because in this survey, we ask women and men, school leaders and head teachers, about how they were perceiving women in these roles. So women are seen as good managers in general, including good managers of school finances, and to be very collaborative. However, many men and women confirm that women were seen as running the schools like their homes, and this is interpreted in a positive way in many cases. They were seen as more nurturing and maternal. In terms of leadership traits, men were more likely to see leadership qualities as male specific, and women were seen in line with the first item as good communicators, kind, organized, and strict. In terms of motivation mechanisms, women reported also higher job satisfaction and a lower likelihood of wanting to change the profession. And women school leaders and supervisors also show to be more likely to act as mentors for other women, while also being helpful for changing gender norms. In our research, we produced some policy recommendations for the Ministry of Education in terms of strengthening merit-based recruitment and appointment systems. We are also recommending testing and scaling measures to expand women's leadership pathways, taking advantage of this 40% of national target in women representation in decision making in Ghana. Making rural leadership positions more viable and attractive for women, and of course leverage the education system to help shift gender norms over time. And just to finalize, I would like to leave you with the voice of Ama. Ama is a fictional name used to protect the identity of the head teacher that gave us this very nice quotation. That reminds us that beyond structural barriers that are what often makes the difference is whether women are actively encouraged, supported, and given opportunities to lead. As we think about the way forward, I think that is very important that we reinforce the importance of building systems, not only removing the barriers that exist, but also intentionally nurturing and supporting women's leadership at every stage. Thank you very much, and hope you will be interested in reading our report that will be available very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolina, for sharing these really interesting insights from Ghana and really helping us ground this conversation in real-world evidence. So now we're going to move on to the next part of the session, which will be a panel conversation where we'll hear from different voices and perspective on gender and school leadership across different contexts. To guide us through this discussion, I'm very happy to introduce Magdalena Lemos, who will facilitate the panel and help us explore how we can move from data and research to practice. So Magdalena, over to you.
Thank you, Isabella. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited for this piece because we have such an incredible panelist. We will be speaking for the next half an hour with them, and then there will be an open space for questions. So please make sure that if you have any questions you would like to make, start using the chat, and I will collect them to ask them at the end. But for now, I will introduce this incredible group of people. We have Fabricia, the Senior Education Specialist and lead of the Gender at the Center initiative in IAP UNESCO. We have Mirat, the head of the gender team of the Minister of Education in Ethiopia. We have Eileen, the education specialist, lead of the gender team at the Center initiative from Mungay. We have Nitirat, the school leader from Thailand, that is also a participant and mentor in a program that we have that is called She Leads. And we have Arjun, the program officer from Echidna Giving. Welcome. Very happy that you could join us. I'll start to ask you to introduce yourself and the kind of work that you're doing, as you were in an elevator and you have 1 minute until the doors open and people leave, and you need to introduce yourself. So I see that everyone is appearing in my view. Excellent. So I will ask Arjun to start with this and then tag the next person to introduce.
Hey, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Arjun. Happy to be here. I work as a program officer for Echidna Giving, which is a philanthropy that our sole focus is on girls' education. Our mission is girls' education and to improve outcomes of girls from early childhood through secondary school. We have a focus on marginalized girls. We are essentially an organization that focuses on grant making in India and East Africa. And we also have some global ecosystem initiatives like Global School Leaders working on gender equity across a variety of issues. Apart from grant making, we also focus on generating knowledge and fostering collaboration at the intersection of gender and education. I'll hand it over to Fabricia.
Thank you very much, Arjun. I'm so happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you for the invitation, and happy to be with you today. So I'm Fabricia, Senior Education Specialist at UNESCO's International Institute for Educational Planning, where I lead our work on gender and equity, including our flagship program, the Gender at the Center initiative. We have the honor to co-lead with Guy, and so happy to see Eileen in the same discussion, my other GCI partner in crime. So at IEP, we support ministries of education at all levels, central to decentralized, to strengthen their systems, and gender equality is a core part of that work. We focus on integrating gender across the full policy cycle, from sector analysis and planning to budgeting to implementation and monitoring. And concretely, we provide technical assistance to countries, build institutional capacity through training on gender transformative education sector planning and budgeting, and generate applied research to inform reforms. For example, the women on women's leadership in education systems through this World program we co-implement with Shanti and with you, GCL, with support of IDRC and GPE. And really, our approach is about moving beyond isolated interventions to support system-level transformation, so that gender equality becomes embedded in how education systems function and deliver results and impact. With that, I will give the floor to Eileen.
Thank you, Fabricia. I'm Eileen. I am with UNGAI, the United Nations Girls Education Initiative. We sit within UNICEF, and we work to advance gender equality in and through education. And we do that by harnessing the power of collective action, so by bringing people together for joint advocacy, joint convening, but also by programming on the ground, amongst others through our flagship program that we co-lead with IEP UNESCO, the Gender at the Center Center Initiative, where we advance gender transformative education systems across Africa and beyond. So I'm really, really happy to be here with you all today. And I'll hand it over to Nitirat.
Thank you, Eileen. Hi, I'm Nitirat from Thailand. You can call me Pink. I am the school director's assistant and I oversee the intensive English program for my students. And I also take care of the human resource department in my school. I just improve the quality of teaching for my teachers, and then I promote gender equality in my school also. I used to be a program manager of Girl Rising, a non-profit organization based in US, and I was the cheerlead participant, like cohort 1, and now I'm the mentor for the cheerlead participant cohort 2 also. That's why I'm here today, and I'm glad that I'm one of the panelists here. So I will hand my microphone to the last one. I'm not sure about her name, but yeah. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Magdalena. I am Nahrata Krospo from Ministry of Education Ethiopia, Executive for Women and Social Affairs. Our department focused on basically into primary pillars, gender mainstreaming and social action and female empowerment. We work to ensure that gender and social affairs are strategically integrated across every level of our ministry. The second pillar is female empowerment. We are deeply committed to empowerment of women through every practical means, like providing targeted training, mentorship, life skill training, and so on. To ensure that women are fully equipped to succeed. A significant part of our process is ensuring that these empowered women have access at the educational leadership. Our department also works towards eliminating gender-based violence within and around the school. This includes implementing protection and response framework and addressing practical barriers like menstrual health and hygiene by ensuring the students have the facilities, students, teachers, and leaders have the facilities and support they need to manage their health with a dignity. We significantly reduce female students' absenteeism and dropout. Thank you. I am happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Mirat, we cannot see you, so I don't know if you, during this conversation, managed to...
My video is open. I don't know how the technical problem is.
Okay, perfect. We will send you a message in private to work on that. But thank you so much for all of your presentations. You're such a good group to be in an elevator with. You all really managed to do it very short and very, very good. So now I will do a round of questions that is more targeted to each one of you to deep dive a bit more on the work that you're doing. So I'm going to start from the system level change because the presentations and the research that we discussed today is highlighting the structural barriers to women leadership, including recruitment process, limited support systems, and bias linked to gender stereotypes. And I would like to start with you, Fabricia, and I would like us to tell us, in your view, what are the most effective strategies to work at system levels to use research for education system reforms? And if there is any example of countries that you would like to highlight, because you have been involved in several and different investigations and research from different countries.
Sure. Thank you, Magdalena, for this question. So maybe just one important lesson from our work across countries is that there is no single pathway to strengthening women's leadership in education. Contexts differ widely, and the role that research can play depends very much on where a country stands on the gender equality agenda and also on the level of political will. A crucial strategy in this process is co-creating research, as Carolina explained, and co-creating research with government partners, particularly ministries of education, Because when research is designed together with policymakers, it is much more likely to address the questions that matter most for them. And ministries can help identify the key policy challenges they face, the information gaps they need to fill, and also the type of evidence that can inform their decisions. So this co-creation process is essential for two main reasons. First, it helps ensure that the research in policy is policy relevant and aligned with national priorities. Second, it strengthens ownership of the findings. When governments are involved from the start in shaping the research questions and the analysis, they are much more likely to trust the evidence and translate it into concrete policy action. So depending on the context, the type of evidence needed can also differ. In some countries, research is first needed to build awareness and political momentum, and evidence showing the positive effects of women's leadership on school governance, school climate, and education outcomes can help move the issue higher on the policy agenda. In other contexts, the priority is to diagnose the systemic barriers that prevent women from accessing leadership positions in order to design targeted reforms. For example, in Madagascar, women already represent about 35% of school leaders nationally and are often more qualified than their male counterparts. This is like the example of Ghana. However, disparities remain in specific regions where cultural norms or economic opportunities discourage women from working in leadership roles. And in that context, research that explores local community dynamics and system barriers is essential to inform targeted responses. In other regions, in other countries, for example, in Benin, the situation is a bit different because female teachers represent less than 30% of the workforce, and women head teachers tend to be significantly less qualified than men. And here the key issue concerns not only leadership access, but also the pipeline of women entering and progressing in the education system. So drawing this situation was a first necessary step towards policy reform. Then institutional analysis has been crucial to identify the different bottlenecks in recruitment, the career progression, and also the professional development. So at IEP, our role is precisely to support countries in moving from evidence to system transformation. And the lesson for us, including through the WILL initiative, is that system level change requires acting on several fronts simultaneously. And in our experience, there are three levers that are really important. First of all, the rules, the policies, and institutional practices. If these are not aligned with gender equality, change will remain limited. In countries like Benin, we have worked closely with the Ministry of Education to analyze where these barriers are embedded in recruitment process, in career pathways, or in institutional practices. And this kind of analysis is really essential because it makes the invisible visible. But the data alone does not create change. It needs to be translated into policy decisions. And in Côte d'Ivoire, another example, we are starting to see this happen. Gender equality in leadership is now explicitly included in sector strategies and reform agendas. And recent nomination processes have significantly increased the share of women leaders. So this tells us something important, that institutional commitment is a key enabler of system change. But those rules, changing the rules is not enough. The second lever is our experience is also in capacity building. And what we have learned is that training needs to be deeply connected to the realities of the system. We cannot just do training like this. In Côte d'Ivoire, we recently supported the Ministry of Education in co-delivering a targeted program for women school leaders. And this program is led by the Department of Human Resources, together with the Department of Gender. So this program reached more than 200 women and focused on two key areas: transformative leadership and managing resistance to change. What was striking is how grounded the discussions were, because participants were very concrete shared very concrete situations, having their authority questioned simply because they are women, facing resistance when they try to introduce more structure and rigor, being expected to adapt to existing practices rather than challenge them. So what came out very strongly is that these women are navigating a double challenge, not only leading change, but also constantly having to prove their legitimacy. And through the training we provided, they developed practical strategies to respond to these situations. So beyond the skills, what we observed was something deeper, a shift in how these women see themselves. Many of them started to position themselves not just as school leaders, but also as agents of change. And this is where capacity building becomes a lever for system transformation. And but even capacity development is not enough. And that's why I really like to say that system level change is about something other, which is probably the most challenging, which is gender norms, because in many contexts, leadership is still seen as a male domain, and these norms create barriers that are often invisible, but very powerful. And one key insight from our work is that resistance is not something to avoid. It's part of the change process, and leaders can be equipped to anticipate it and respond strategically. And this is why integrating resistance management into our leadership training has been so important. It helps leaders not only cope with resistance, but actually use it as an entry point for change. And at the same time, we need to go beyond individual women to change norms. System change requires engaging communities, and it also includes creating spaces of support and collective action among women leaders themselves. And just quickly, in Côte d'Ivoire, for example, following the validation of the study and the co-construction of an action plan with and for women leaders, they decided to organize themselves into a network. And this network, which is the network of school female leaders called REF-CEDI, is already well advanced and is expected to be officially launched in the coming weeks. And this is very important development because it helps break isolation and creates peer support and mentoring opportunities, and also strengthens women's ability to collectively influence the system. So really, to conclude, achieving system level change requires connecting evidence, capacity, norms, and institutional reform. And when evidence through research is co-created with ministries and aligned with their priorities, it becomes much more than a study. It becomes a tool for reform. But our experience also shows something else that may sound obvious. When we work on leadership, we see just how critical leadership actually is to making change happen. And the experience of Côte d'Ivoire is one of the key drivers of change has been the leadership of the ministry Human Resources Directorate. And this reminds us of something fundamental, which is that system change requires champions. It requires allies, including men in leadership positions who are willing to challenge the status quo and actively drive change within institutions. But of course, change should not depend on individuals alone. But what we see in practice is that individual leadership can act as a powerful catalyst to unlock system-level transformation. And this strongly reinforces the idea that investing in leadership is not really a marginal intervention. It's a core lever for transforming education systems.
Thank you so much, Fabricia. You share such an enriched thing. You share so many things that I don't know how to do a summary of it, but I will take two things that I find very, very relevant for this conversation. The first one is these three levers that you mentioned, the rules, the policy, and the institutional practice. I think that frame is super powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then the relevance of the work that you're doing, always in co-creation with government and really rooted in the context. I think like that's also something super important that sometimes we usually say, but it's also very hard to do. So now I would pass to Mirat, because you, Mirat, are holding a very interesting position right now because you are in the government and you have been working with different organizations. So I think you can also give us a lot of information around how those feels. How do you think about all of these? What is the type of evidence that is most useful for the government to support policy reforms? And what have you learned from different programs and interventions that you have been leading in Ethiopia? And I hope, Mirat, you can hear me because I still cannot see you.
Apologize for the inconvenience. I can fix
hear you
my
now.
camera. Thank you. The question is about several
Sorry,
initiatives.
Magdalena. If you may repeat the question for Mehret, please.
Yes,
Because her
sure.
connection has not been stable. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I will, definitely. So my question had 3 questions. The first one is, what do you think about what Fabricia shared around like co-creating with other organizations? Then the second one is, what type of evidence is more useful for the government to support policy reforms? And the third one is, what have you learned from the different programs and interventions that you have been leading in Ethiopia?
Thank you, Magadala. Let me start from the last question. What are some lessons learned? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Several initiatives were implemented to increase the proportion of female teachers and leaders here in Ethiopia. One of these initiatives is the General Education Quality Improvement Program, which is the flagship reform initiative of the Ethiopian Ministry of Education, primarily supported by World Bank, and it's a multi-donor initiative. The current General Education Quality Improvement Program, is designed to support Ethiopia's education sector development program, ASDP6, which is explicitly called for increasing the number of female teachers and school leaders. It recognizes that lack of female role models in leadership is a major barrier to girls staying in school. It were made a significant investment in our human capital, specifically teachers, to transform teachers to leadership position. Around 3,000 female teachers were trained to the leadership program. The teachers were successfully trained to bridge the leadership gap. The goal is to move women from the classroom into principal and vice principal position. This created a vital talent pool and sent a message across the sector. The female leadership was a national priority. Even if the Ministry of Education by GKP program trained around 3,000 teachers, but the proportion of female teachers and female leaders didn't improve. It remained the same, around 11%. The lesson learned from this program is the training only is not enough. We learned that providing general leadership training isn't enough to bring women into leadership roles. There are several obstacles, social and structural barriers, domestic burdens, lack of confidence, and lacks that requires a specialized approach. The second lesson is, if we don't intentionally pull women into the leadership pipeline, the system defaults to the male. From the GKP program, we realized that the general training was not closing the gap. The proportion of female leaders and the female teachers is remained the same, not improved. So we shifted our focus currently to the National School Leadership Training Program under STEP. It is about female leadership under the components to Aspiring Female Leadership Program is started now. The first shift is when we shift from the General Education Quality Improvement Program to the STEP National School Leadership Training and Aspiring Female Leaders component too. The first shift is the shift from training to incubation. We don't just wait for women to apply, or we don't need to ask women women. We are proactively identifying high potential female teachers earlier. The National School Leaders Training is not just a classroom, it is a leadership incubator. We are building a certified course so that when a principal position opens up, the ministry never has to ask her. Here are the women. We have already ready women to be leaders, aspiring female leaders. The second the curriculum include power skills. The second shift is the aspiring teachers training module also include the power skills. School management is about more than just budget and attendance. For a woman leading in a traditional environment, leadership is about agency. In National School Leaders Program, modules now specifically include negotiation, public speaking, and conflict resolution. We are giving those women the tools to navigate institutional, political, and command room with confidence. The third one is, most importantly, we are bridging the confidence gap. By labeling these women as aspiring leaders from day one, we are changing the professional identity. We are moving them from mindset of I am a teacher to I am future executive, I am future teacher. This mental shift, supported by the peer networks they build during the training, is what makes the STEP program's approach truly gender transformative. In short, the National School Leaders Training is the engine that ensures the environment we have made in our female education actually results in them sitting at the head of the table. As a result of this training, which is in progress, but as a result, the aspiring teachers aspiring leadership position increasing and their confidence is developing. The lesson learned from this is, in the STEP program, we have learned that mentorship is the success thing. Someone rise from teacher to deputy head of our education bureaus because of targeted support proves that women need visible role models to step out of the shadow. We now include life skills, confidence building, and creating safe space for female leaders to discuss the unique challenges they face, such as balancing leadership with family and overcoming social circumstances. Our fourth lesson learned from the program. Evidence in the next question. What type of evidence is most useful for government partners to support policy information? In my opinion, I think there are 5 strategies to support, or most useful for government partners to support policy reform efforts. The first one is, what are the most effective strategies to work at the system level to use research for education? I have recommended around 5 strategies. The first one is evidence-informed policy advocacy. Instead, just filling up, frame this as a bridge, the research to policy divided. The strategy is conduct systemic review of existing policies, programs, and plans against the research findings or the new research findings. The goal is to use research to design living strategies that adapt as new data emerge, ensuring the policy isn't just a document, but a reflection of proven best practice, evidence-based practices. The second strategy I prefer is take knowledge management units within ministries and regional, WRDA, and at each level of the education sector. which means train officials not just to read research, but to apply it. Training individuals, experts, leaders, and all the executives how to use the research data or the research findings. This moves the system from a culture of tradition to a culture of data-driven decision making. So the second strategy is train officials, not just, you could say knowledge management units within ministries, region, and Warada level. The third one, aligning resource allocation. Aligning donor and domestic funding with research priorities. To ensure the resources are directed toward interventions that research has proven to have the highest return on investment. Aligning the budget to the research priority will help the interventions research has proven. The third one is stakeholder engagement. Building the stakeholder engagement between the ministry, international partners like UNICEF, World Bank, and regional bureaus and local communities to move beyond consulting the stakeholders and toward co-ownership. When local leaders and the school board own this gender and equity initiatives, the programs become sustainable long after the initial funding ends. The fourth strategy is strong monitoring, evaluation, and learning (MEL). Embedding real-time feedback loops into the system is the fifth strategy. Research shouldn't just happen at the end of the project. Continuous M&D allows the system to course correct based on evidence before large-scale failure occurs. What type of evidence is most useful for government partners to support policy reforms? In my opinion, context-specific evidence is most useful for the government. It is in just a global sense. It is a data that reflects local realities, culture, and domestic policy makers need it now. It will work here, not just in a textbook. So context-specific evidence is most useful. The second one is easily implemented evidence. High-level theories are hard to say. The best evidence includes a how to guide considering existing budgets, staff capacity, and infrastructure. The third one, tailored and achievable evidence. The data should speak directly to the specific departments and goals. It shouldn't just identify a problem. It must point directly to a concrete solution. The last one is simplified evidence. Government leaders are often generalists with massive portfolio. Evidence must be simple of academic jargon and presented in a clear, persuasive brief that can be explained in a 3-minute elevator. Especially simplified evidence is most useful for government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mirat. It was super interesting. Thank you for all the tips around research. I think they are super specific and useful. And thank you for sharing around the training and the pipeline. I would like to continue in that line of training programs, because as shown by the presentation, even where women are well represented in teacher, they tend to be underrepresented in school leadership because of gender barrier in different levels. In this context, as we were listening, there has been several initiatives to support women through target trainings. So, Eileen, I would like us to tell us a bit more around the lessons learned from the leadership training that you have been doing in Mali.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And yeah, first of all, I just wanted to congratulate the researchers from the WIL team, but also from all the partners. I think this is really an important body of evidence that really shows not only the need for more women representation in leadership positions, but also this great potential and the positive impact that women school leaders have on children's learning outcomes, their well-being, and especially on girls. So I think we are really convinced that investing in women leadership in education is a key strategy to advance gender equality in and through education. And so at UMGAI, we really want to translate this evidence into action on the ground and into support programs for women teachers and women school leaders to access and to keep leadership positions in schools. And so that's what we started to do within the Gender at the Center initiative. And we're really working on a dual approach. And I think some of our other panelists have said it already. We're working at the individual level to support women with leadership support. But then very importantly, we're also working at the institutional level because we cannot just leave the whole responsibility to the individual women. We also need to tackle these systemic barriers, these gender barriers that women are facing. So really important to work on this dual approach. And so at the individual level, we started rolling out this leadership support program for women teachers and school leaders in Mali, where we really use this blended approach to support them to really understand better how gender inequality works, how these structural barriers that they face, how they operate, and really increasing those insights into those dynamics. Then we also support them to learn more about different styles of leadership. What is your own personal leadership style? How can you grow your leadership? We talk about feminist leadership, and that there's not only one model of leadership, but there can be various models of leadership. And then very importantly, we also work with them on how they can progress gender equality for the children in their schools. How can they also tackle those harmful gender norms with the children in the school? So a whole package of support. What is really important in our approach is that networking approach. I think beyond building capacity, beyond strengthening skills, it's so important for women to have that support system, to have a safe space where they can share their challenges, where they can share good practices with their peers. And so we really invest in those networks, I would say, both in a horizontal and a vertical way. So horizontally, we put them in a network of their peers, other school leaders from other schools, other regions, even other countries. And that's a really important safe space for them to feel supported. But we also put them in a vertical network because we really want to approach this support, I would say, from a life cycle approach throughout the education system. So we also put them in touch with senior women leaders within the National Ministry of Education, senior women leaders at the district level, so that they really also can learn and be mentored from women who have gone on this journey before them. But also in the other way, we put them in touch with young feminist activists so that we can also really stimulate an intergenerational approach of building solidarity and building support. And we've seen in Mali that has gotten some really great results. And I wanted to read a quote from one of our participants because it's so powerful. It says, the support network is a lifeline. We're no longer isolated in our struggles. And I think that really sums it up really well, that that's such an important aspect for women to feel supported by this network. And then secondly, we work at the institutional level because, as others have said, we cannot change this situation without tackling the institutional and the systemic barriers that women face. And so first of all, when we work with ministries of education, we also start at that very personal level. We work with senior decision makers in ministries of education to help them question their own gender biases, question their own gender attitudes, and really trying to raise awareness and shift those social norms that also exist within the minds of senior decision makers within the ministries of education. And then we go into providing really targeted support to change some of those policies that keep women from accessing leadership positions. So, for example, in Senegal last year, we did a gender transformative leadership training with senior leaders within the Ministry of Education. And what happened there was that we did it with all the directors, and afterwards the HR director came to us and he said, I want your support in reviewing our recruitment and career development policies within the ministry. And just also wanted to read a quote that he said. He said, now I understand that it's important to ensure the gender dimension within our recruitment practices. And this goes beyond simply recruiting women. We also need to ensure that women are represented at every level. So I think that also really beautifully sums up how we've been able to shift some of that thinking within senior decision makers within the ministry. And yeah, just to conclude, I think it's really important to work on those two levels, the individual and the institutional level, work on the gender norms that are happening within all those levels. And we would be happy to expand that offer to more countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elaine. It was super clear, and I think it's very interesting how you have been thinking about the system in these different levels. So thank you so much for sharing the example. As we have been discussing in this space, for these transformations to have place, we need different stakeholders being invited and part of this. So I think, Arjun, now we want to hear your perspective, because again, I think you come from a different space from where people have been talking. So from a philanthropy perspective, what role can donors play in strengthening the pipeline on women's leader in education, whether through research, partnership, or policy advocacy, while continue to advance girls' education outcomes? And I think Echidna Giving has such an impressive testimony to give us.
Yeah, thank you. I think there are two parts to the answer. One is from the philanthropic perspective. I think funders who are interested in the intersection of gender and education, we believe that it has to be more long-term flexible funding that gives partners the opportunity to innovate. Changing gender norms is time-taking. There's a lot of learning, research, and these things cannot happen with short-term projects. So I think that's one thing I would encourage. That's what we believe. I think the other thing, what we are learning from our partners is also equally important. And one of the things I think Tejas, Caroline, Aline, a lot of people have mentioned this already, but what can we do along with our partners to have an enabling environment where women leaders just don't get promoted, but also can thrive? And for that, I think there are two things that we are learning. One is how do we engage the middle tier? So Aline mentioned engaging different levels of leadership. It's not just the school head teachers, but I come from India where we see there's this middle tier leadership, the district education officers, and even if there are women school leaders, the middle tier is also male dominated, right? So how do we engage the middle tier and have women representation at these different levels? And the second thing is learning about the systemic and structural barriers. So there are lots of things apart from the education system that prevents gender equity at different levels. So issues related to mobility, issues related to childcare and leave policies, things like the promotion process itself. All these are systemic and structural barriers. I think one of the things that we believe is that everything starts, any conversation around gender, we need to first start with ourselves. We need to question the power dynamic between donors and implementing organizations. We need to question power dynamics across different hierarchies. And so we start with ourselves. And I think the starting point is conversations like these, where We have conversations about leadership, culture, how do we understand gender. And one of the things we have done is that we've spoken and learned from our partners, and we have come up with a gender diagnostic toolkit. So, how education organizations themselves understand gender. And I think it's a good starting point to have a conversation that we reflect as a community ourselves as we work with more women leaders. I'll share a link to the gender diagnostic toolkit in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arjun. I think you have been saying two amazing things, and I saw a lot of hearts when you were speaking. The long-term flexible funding, it's something very hard to see in philanthropy now. So I think like it's also super appreciate that you guys have not only do that, but invite others to do that as well. I think that's super, super relevant. And also learning from partners and with them. So I think like engaging middle tier, understanding what gender means, how we can build that together. I think like all of that is super, super relevant. So thank you so much for sharing it. And last but not least, Pink. I would love to hear you. It's always a pleasure to have a school leader's voice in this space. So thank you for joining us. And I would like us to tell us, based on your own experience, what kind of support or initiatives can make the biggest difference in helping women teachers move into leadership roles and succeed once they are there? And what advice would you give a woman teacher aspiring to a leadership position?
Thank you, Maki. Okay. Based on my own experience, women should pursue as much education as they desire. After all, a degree is more than just a credential. It is a gateway to societal acceptance and a lifetime of fresh insights. However, formal education is only half the battle. To truly help women teachers move into leadership, we must provide them with practical training in essential skills, specifically in effective leadership, precise decision-making, and persuasive communication, paired with the kind of constructive mentorship that ensures they succeed long after they have earned their seat at the table. For example, at my school, the management team actively encourages female teachers to pursue higher education and specialized certifications by offering dedicated educational leave. To support continuous growth, we provide annual skills training at no cost to our staff and teacher. Furthermore, we conduct regular classroom observations followed by personalized one-on-one feedback sessions at least twice per semester. We take pride in our merit-based promotion structure, ensuring that leadership opportunities within the management team are awarded based on individual skills and capacities rather than gender. And to all the women teachers who aspire to be in the leadership position, it is completely normal to feel fearful or insecure. These feelings often surface when you are pushing boundaries and growing. However, trust in your ability to achieve whatever you aspire to through hard work and continuous self-improvement. Have the courage to try and the resilience to bounce back if you fail. Your organization and society need strong leaders, and you can absolutely be one of them if you set your mind to it. Yeah, this is my answer. It's quite sure.
Thank you so much, Pink. That was wonderful. And I think the trust yourself message is always so relevant for women. So thank you so much for bringing it, and also for being like the example of trusting you and doing all that work to be in the position that you are now. So I will do a last very short round of one question that is the same for everyone. But in the meantime, I really want to invite all of the participants to leave the questions in the chat if you have one, because we'll have time for hopefully one or two questions from the chat. So the last question for all of the panelists, very short, even shorter than the elevator pitch. In one sentence, what would you say is the single most important action that can support women's leadership in education? And Aline, I would ask you to start and then pass it.
Yes, very short. I could come up with a long list, but I think it really sums up to just tackle the harmful gender norms that underlie this lack of access to leadership positions on 3 areas. 1, with the women themselves, to tackle the harmful beliefs they hold themselves. 2, with the senior decision makers within the ministry. And 3, and I think most importantly, in the classroom. It starts with the children. It starts early. Children need to learn different gender attitudes, different role models, and different ways of being a leader. And I think if we can shift that, then we will break down barriers for many future generations to come. Thanks.
What do you want to hear next, Aline?
I'd love to hear from Arjun.
I have to do a +1 to Aline. I work in early childhood, Aline, so start early as possible. That's my thing. Nitirat, over to you.
Thank you. For me, the only answer will be like constructive mentorship. This is what like She Leads is doing, and I think I get the real support and the real like useful mentorship throughout the last year. And now I'm one of the mentors, and I want to be a good mentor to lead our female teachers who want to be in the leadership position to pursue their dream also. So constructive mentorship is my answer. So maybe Fabrizia.
Thank you, Nitirat. Yeah, for me, it will be one of the most powerful ways to support women's leadership is simply to make it visible. When teachers work with female leaders, their perceptions of leadership begin to shift, and stereotypes start to break down.
Amazing. Mirat, you are the last one.
Yes, thank you. Actively sponsor and truly support women to bridge the gap between classroom roles and executive leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have gender norms, start early, mentorship, stereotypes, like different things, but very aligned. It was such an amazing conversation. Thank you for this panel. I think like having this different perspective from different places is also super interesting and unique. So thank you so much. And we have a few minutes to ask the panelist or one of the panelists if you want a question. So I'm opening the floor. I didn't see any questions in the chat. Is there anyone that wants to unmute themselves and ask a question? You can do it. And if not, I can ask another question, but I want to hear from the participants. Anyone? No? If not, I will look because I had some questions written.
Maybe I would like to make a comment. Can I?
Yeah, you can.
I believe sometimes the focus is placed on differences between women and men, when it should be on how to ensure equity. Maybe leadership positions are unable to reach when you have to lead with maternity, and by simply setting a nursery could be make a big difference. That's it.
Thank you, Pilar, for your comment. Any other comment or question? I see one in the chat. So here is a more specific one. If I would like to do this kind of research in my country, can I contact anyone to get more information? I'm sure you can. So we can answer that in the chat directly. Different contacts to think that. Fabricia.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to maybe react a bit on what Pilar just said, and one thing that comes to my mind when we started this Will project, and this is always something that in the conversation that we have ministers of education, is the essentialist characteristic that this type of research can have. On focusing on female leadership and some resistance that we have with colleagues on the ground, why is it that women succeed more than men, and always this conversation, women versus men. And the focus that we wanted to say is not that it's something that is specific to women. This is, social construction, this is gender, and, women have developed, some kind of, leadership. That is not, saying that they are better than men, but we focus on the practice and how this what they have developed, in their practice of their position can help the system. And this is what we try to put emphasis on, is that it's not about women doing better than men. It's really about the fact that some women, in some context, they have developed some good practice. And what is important for us is the system and how we improve system. And we have good practice, so let's try to generalize this practice to have, to improve and the enabling environment, for girls and boys, to thrive and to evolve, in positive environments. So this is just, the how we frame, this kind of research. It's very important because, we have also, a lot of resistance, from men in this area.
Thank you, Felicia. I see some questions now. So I would like to voice over the one Jessica put. I find myself wondering how a gender-based approach help us identify the best qualities for leadership in schools. That I think that's a very interesting wondering. So I would open for the panelists if someone has any comments or reflections on that.
I can share one quick one. I think it's the question of equity, because gender is one construct, definitely, but in many countries there are other issues like religious discrimination. In India, we have caste. So lots of issues will be there. I think the overall, a gender-based approach also helps bring up questions about equity and inclusion overall. And that is very useful sometimes. And I think the general thing is, how do we have more empathetic leaders? I think school leaders are role models for children. And looking at leadership around the world generally, I think it's important to have more empathy right now.
Thank you, Arjun. Anyone else has a comment, or should I move for? So maybe I can. Eileen, go.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that. I think that's what I referred to when I was speaking about feminist leadership. And I think that's a dialogue we want to have with the women we work with. And it refers a bit to what Carolina also presented in these practices that Fabricia was also speaking about. It's about sharing power. It's about participatory approaches. It's about different ways of being a leader than the traditional leadership models that we've been taught. So I think feminist leadership is a really nice model to work around leadership and to also teach children different ways of being in the world. Eventually, that's what gender transformative education is also about. So this links really well also with what we want to change for children within the education system as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I can do, I think, one last question here. That is, Patria put, if there are resources or research evidence of promoting women leadership in the in-service phase, rather than the pre-service or recruitment phase. Things like performance management, incentives, benefits, protections that utilize gender lens.
In our institutional analysis, and we try to, we have already some elements. I mean, but now we are in the phases of collecting more data at the school level, so we will be able to share some results very soon, because we have collected data on the practices and on the recruitment and on performance, management and so on. So hopefully we will be able to share those results soon. But yeah, this is definitely something that is important to understand in order to recommend some concrete policies to the countries. Even though it's not easy to gather, but and also, as I said earlier, it will also depend on the context and on the data that we will able to collect. But hopefully we will be Patria. We will be soon releasing some results, and we will be happy to be in touch if you wanna have those data and and if you wanna have some discussion on that, but it's not easy, but because it will really depend on how disaggregated we can the data can be, and how what can be collected at the school level. So we will be in touch.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So with this note, now we are closing just in time. So I will pass it to Isabella to close. But again, thank you so much to our panelists for this amazing conversation.
Thank you, Magdalena, and thanks very much to all our panelists for such a rich and insightful discussion. I think it's been fantastic to learn from your experiences in different contexts. And also thank you to everyone who joined us today. Your presence and your engagement and all your questions have really made this conversation even more meaningful. So in terms of next steps, we're very excited about what's coming. This work is going to continue, and as you heard in the presentations, the full launch of the research will come very soon. But in the meantime, we encourage you to stay connected and to follow us through social media to keep up with all upcoming updates, insights, and other opportunities to continue this conversation. So with that, thank you again for being part of this global dialogue on advancing gender equity in school leadership, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.